Item 4 is superintendent's recognition. Mrs. Parks.
Around the state vying for this honor to perform in one of 15 ensembles, band, orchestra, and choirs. This competitive process begins throughout the state in auditions hosted by 33 Texas Music Educators Association regions. Individual musicians perform selected music for a panel of judges who rank each instrument or voice part. From this ranking, a select group of musicians advances from the region to compete against musicians from other regions in 8 area competitions. The highest ranking musicians judged at TMEA area competitions qualify to perform in a TMEA all-state music group. We are pleased to announce that we have 2 students from Temple High School who have qualified for All-State. First, congratulations to Haley Ainsley, come on up, a senior at Temple High School who placed sixth chair in the alto section 1 for the Texas All-State Choir. Haley was selected for one of 8 spots through this competitive process. And congratulations to Kyle Cunningham, a senior at Temple High School, who was the lone saxophonist to advance out of his area audition room to the 6A All-State Band. TMEA only takes 8 tenor saxophones at the state level, making Kyle one of the top tenor saxophonists in the state. Shake the board's hand, and then we'll get you a picture. Here, come up this way, buddy. In front. You're good. You're good. Perfect. These all-state students will participate in 3 days of rehearsals directed by nationally recognized conductors during the annual state TMEA clinic convention this summer. Their performances will be before thousands of attendees that bring this extraordinary process to a close. And truly, what an honor for you both. We are so, so very proud of you. If you guys want to come up right here in the middle, they're going to get a picture. Yeah, yeah, there you go, right where Kyle is, perfect. Just a second. And we do want to recognize their teachers first. Our choir teachers that are here, Director Cameron Reclue and Sam Davis. So thank you so very much. And band director Brent Matheson and Marcos Duran. And lastly, we don't want to forget your parents. So if your parents, if you would please stand so that we can recognize you. So truly, truly, what an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations to you both. And now, Garrett Matheson, who is a senior at Temple High School, has a presentation for us that he has prepared on the Maker Faire.
And if I may, I'd like to set Garrett up a little bit. Some of you may remember that this past year we held our very first Maker Faire at Temple High School. In fact, some of you were in attendance. But this actually was a passion that started about 2 years ago with an email from Garrett to myself when I was an assistant superintendent here. And he scheduled a meeting in my office to tell me, this is what I want to do. I want to bring a Maker Faire to Temple ISD, in particular to the high school. Garrett has put together this presentation because some of you were unable to make the actual event, and he wanted to provide information on the event. And he's actually part of a process with administration right now to continue this after his graduation this spring. So Garrett, take it away.
Hello, my name is Garrett Matheson, and I was the lead director for the Temple High School Maker Faire. The fair was held on the afternoon of November 14th, 2018, so last semester at the Temple High School Library. And the purpose of this presentation is to explain what happens what Maker Fairs are and what happened at the Maker Faire we had at Temple High School. So first things first, I'd like to thank my team, who really were the ones who helped to make sure that this happened. So first I have Naman Bakhta, who is the Maker Relations Director, Ben Doe, the Logistics Director, Seth Little, who is the Publicity Director, Carly Moore, the Community Director, Bryce Richardson, who is the volunteer director, and I'd like to direct a special thanks to Temple High School's principal, Dr. Jason Mayo. Is he here? Oh, hi. And as well as Jessica Mays, who was my mentor, who helped make sure that this really happened. So first, what is a Maker Faire? So Maker Faire is really a worldwide community-centered event with family-friendly events that are designed to show off what people like to make in the community. So this can be pretty much anything you can think of, so long as it follows those kind of guidelines, if so to say. They're typically DIY or homemade projects, and it ranges from art to science, sewing, crafts, technology, music, food, carpentry, and many more. The first ever Maker Faire was in 2006 in the San Francisco Bay Area. By 2016, there were nearly 200 Maker Fairs across the world, with the San Francisco Maker Faire drawing over 100,000 people to this event. In an article written by Time magazine titled "Why the Maker Movement is Important to America's Future," the author defines the Maker Movement as the following, quote, "The Maker Movement, as we know, is the umbrella term for independent inventors, designers, and tinkerers. A convergence of computer hackers and traditional artisans, the niche is established enough to have its own magazine make, as well as its hands-on Maker Fairs that are like catnip to DIYers and combine that with open source learning, contemporary design, and powerful personal technologies like 3D printers. The creations, born in cluttered local workshops and bedroom offices, stir the imagination of consumers numbed by generic mass-produced made-in-China merchandise. Maker Faire is the best evidence of the power and reach of the Maker Movement all around the globe." So one of the first places that I had really heard of the Maker Faire was in Austin. And so the Austin Maker Faire is held annually, and it's something that really inspired me to bring it here to Temple High School. So I have presented at the Austin Maker Faire both my freshman and sophomore year, and these really gave me a good idea for how these things kind of work in an inside look into how we could bring a similar experience back here to Temple. So now I just want to kind of go over some of the stuff that happened that day. So we had over 500 attendees, so that includes students, parents, staff members, and community members, including our mayor, Denny Dunn, who came by. We had 25 makers, 18 volunteers, a jazz combo, a rap artist, and piano soloists. And just so that you can see, that's a breakdown of some of the projects we had. So a lot of them were fine arts. But what exactly sounds are produced by when you have a jazz combo, a rap artist, and piano soloists all at once? So the kind of funny thing about that was I had a schedule all laid out for when each performance was supposed to happen, and they came up to me and said, "Hey, can we just play together?" And I was like, "You know what? Sure, there's nothing going on right now." So they got together and they did this themselves, First, we have Carlo Domingo on trumpet, Kyle Cunningham on tenor saxophone, Ashton Yarborough on bass guitar, Gunnar Coley on piano, Zach Desrens on guitar, Eric Brown, who's the one rapping there. Pretty good bar. Oh, whoops. Whoop, not what I meant to do. And then it was Adrian Sanders on the drums. Oh, whoops. All right, there we go. All right. Sorry, a little messed up there. All right. So here's some of the projects we had during that day. So these aren't all of them, but this is just a couple. So first is my project. Not again.
We'll flip the slide.
Okay. So I'm not going to use the laser again. That's what happens. First we have my project, which is up in the top left corner, or top right corner, left. Whatever, that corner. So I had a little VCR robot thing that I put some markers on in a 3D printer. In the top right, we have Andrea Mendez and Lorena Flores, who are both freshmen, who were making tres leches cake with fruit. Very delicious. And then we have Kerrigan Smith in the bottom left with her artwork, and Sam Lillier in the bottom right, who was building miniature models and painting them. These pictures, in the top left, we have Catherine Myers with her kombucha tea. That's how you say it. It's very delicious as well. We have Jordan Fisher, who made some bread, pretty good bread, if I do say so myself. We have Lizette Wong in the bottom left, with her artwork, and then we have Haley Fitzsimmons with her artworks and jewelry at the bottom right. So now that you've kind of seen some of the things that went on during that day, I'd like to now talk about the future of the Maker Faire. So the first things first, we have to form a group. And we've actually already done that. We're going to have a meeting later this month to sit down and talk with them about some of the things that I had to do, as well as some of my team members did as well. Once we get that group settled and everything, we're going to reapply for a school Maker Faire license next year. That'll allow us to be able to continue to use the logos, the playbook, which they gave me, all the materials and such. And then the hardest part, which is the sign up, getting people signed up and logistics. And then, assuming everything goes correctly, by next fall, we'll have the second Temple High School Maker Faire. So I would just like to thank all the board members for their time and continued support of all the extracurriculars that go on at Temple High School. I'd like to again thank Dr. Jason Mayo, as well as Jessica Mays, my team, who I helped lead, and all the awesome makers and volunteers for helping me make the first Maker Faire really happen. If there's any questions or anything. Anyone?
Well, just want to say thank you very much for putting this together and coming today and presenting to us. Heard a lot of good things about the Maker Faire. It's a great project, and thank you very much. Thank you for getting it started in the team.
Sure thing.
Garrett, are you a senior? You're a senior, right?
Yes.
So I want to just really commend you for taking this project on and then making sure that it keeps on going after you've left. So thank you very much for that. It's something very important in your later years as well. So great job.
Thank you.
And Garrett may be the first student that is presented from this podium in the new administration building. So congratulations on that. You're going to be a tough act to follow. And I do want to say, many of us have had a chance to watch Garrett over the past several years. And I am very, very proud, just like everybody else in here, how far he's come. And whether it's MIT or Rice or wherever he wants to go, they're going to be very lucky to have him. Thanks again, Garrett. Congratulations. Great job.
Thank you.
Kristen, would you like to have a picture up here with? Yeah. You don't, Garrett, if you don't mind coming back? Thank you. If you've been here for the presentations, other part of the board meeting, please feel free to stay, but you're welcome to leave now if that's what you like to do. Before we go on, just want to remind the board members that when we're up here presenting, especially to gets picked up for the record, if you make sure you punch the button here where it lights up when you're on, and then you can punch it again when it goes off. So. All right, item 6 is the board president's report. Item 6A, annual update of the tax reinvestment zone number 1. Mayor Tim Davis will be presenting tonight. And Tracy will do the actual presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just for the record, it was Mayor Tim Davis that attended the Maker Faire and not Mayor Danny Dunn. So I feel like that correction's appropriate now that the student has left and that the mayor is standing back there.
Well, thank you and good evening. I have no music in my presentation, and I tried to take out as many numbers as I could. I heard y'all like things. Okay. But I am pleased to present the annual report for the Temple Reinvestment Zone for the year ended September 30th, 2018. And I wanted to just hit on a few highlights of the report. For the year, our source of funds from the reinvestment zone totaled $51.1 million. Of that amount, 25.1 was from increments from the 8 participating taxing entities, and 24.1 million was from bond proceeds that were issued at the very end of the fiscal year. And of those revenues, if you look at the total of 25.1 million in the increment revenues, 68% of that was from Temple ISD, and 15% from the city of Temple, 9.8 million from the Bell County, 4.7% from the Temple College District, and 1.2% from Bell County Road Fund. Moving on into the use of funds for the reinvestment zone. Total use of funds for the year were 27.5 million. Of that amount, close to 57% was public improvements, 21% debt service, 18% of it was reimbursement to Temple ISD for their participation in the zone to make them whole per their contract. And then we had other use of funds of 3.38%. Just wanted to highlight a few of the public improvements that totaled a little over 15 million for the year. The Santa Fe Plaza, which we're setting in today, there was a total of 4.6 million during the year that was invested in the plaza. Prior to FY18, the reinvestment zone had invested a little over 3.6 million in the plaza, and when it's programmed to spend an additional 7.7 million in FY19 for a total investment in the plaza of close to $16 million. Another highlight for the public improvements of the year included it's a major project in the reinvestment zone to construct the outer loop from the north end to the southern, where it connects to I-35. During the year, we were under design and purchasing right-of-way for 1.9 million. Another big project within the reinvestment zone began the visioning and concept design for North 31st Street improvements that subsequent to the year-end, Temple ISD has partnered with the zone for that. During FY19, We're continuing the zone is design of that project and planning for construction in FY 2020. Another highlight of the use of funds was investments in the Crossroads Park, a little over $2 million for detention, public improvement. And as I mentioned, at the end of the year, the reinvestment zone issued bonds totaling close to $24 million. The majority of that is to complete several sections of the outer loop for a total of $14.5 million. Additional improvements to the downtown of close to $6.2 million, and then some various other public improvements. Just a note with the reinvestment zone, our total debt at the end of the year FY in 2018 totaled principal outstanding of $60.1 million, and 63.11% of that debt will be retired within 10 years. On behalf of the city manager, Bryn Myers, and Mayor Davis, we would like to thank Temple ISD for their participation in the reinvestment zone, critical partner in making Temple a better place. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Members, are there any questions for Tracy or Mayor Davis? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Yes.
And for coming tonight and giving us the update, so
Yes, well,
appreciate that.
Again, thank TISD for their participation.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. All right, the next item is B, future items of discussion. Is there any items that the board members wish to take up at the next board meeting? Seeing not, okay. Item C is important dates, and Dr. Ott.
Okay, if I can draw your attention to the board packet under important dates, and I'll start with this Friday. Two events this Friday. We have the Temple College EMT Skills Lab, where we have instructors from Temple College coming to the CTE building to perform demonstrations with our EMT students. We also have the 4th annual Bluebonnet Extravaganza that same day, so they're right next to each other if you want the opportunity to go back and forth. And that will actually be at the Temple High School Library. It's a breakfast it starts at 9 o'clock and the celebration goes through 1. And these are for elementary students that have read a certain amount of books on the Texas Bluebonnet list. And we will bus them over to Temple High School. On February 21st, parent information session on blended learning. This is something that's been in the works for some time. I want to commend the C&I department. And this has come from input from parents as well as from students. I think my mic's going in and out, as well as students. And so we're excited to welcome families and go through some blended learning simulations and an overview with them. And once again, it's February 21st, and it's here in the administration building. February 26th, we have the TASD Legislative Conference. I believe we have a few of the board members signed up. I'll be attending as well. And then February 27th, we have our job fair at Texas, or one of many job fairs. This one's at Texas A&M Central Texas. And that is on Wednesday, and our HR department will be bringing some of our teachers to that event to recruit. The same day at 4 o'clock, we have a school board policy committee meeting. February 28th is our facilities committee meeting. And then the last date, please make note of this, March 4th, our annual TEF academic recognition ceremony. And that will be at the Western Hills Church of Christ at 6 p.m. And that's it. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ott. Item 7 is consent items in consideration for approval of the following group of items. Agenda items 7A through F1. Is it the board's pleasure to hear this together or to pull any items individually?
Make a motion that we approve them all together.
All right.
Make a motion that we approve all of them together.
Motion by Mr. Gaines and a second by Mrs. Davis. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Item 8, A, Human Resources, and Mr. Palmer. And that's one, consideration for approval of 2018-2019 personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Posey, members of the board. Actually, I have two groups here. One is to finish out the year, and you have that name before you, Ashley Boyd. That's an addition over at Western Hills with our special ed department. So I actually, Dr. Ott, bring that to you for our first recommendation.
Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Suarez, second by Mr. Gaines. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right. And item 2 is consideration for approval of 2019-2020 personnel and addendum to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're trying to get ahead of the game here a little bit in February hiring for next year, but these positions have, one, actually, the LSSP has been there all year, and it's been open, so we have opportunity to hire what we feel like will be an outstanding candidate for next year. And then the other person has been with Temple for a good while, working on their RN right now, and so we want to get her on board as well. This position is one that takes Ms. Haynes' spot as she's retiring come June. So her name is Kimberly Glavey.
Okay. This item does require a motion. Is there a motion? Motion by Dr. Sanhi,
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Gowan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Plus addendum. Plus addendum. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Posey.
Item B is curriculum instructions, which I don't believe we have anything tonight. Item C is finance facilities. Mr. Boyd. And
Hi, good evening, Board.
Ms. Vaden.
It's my pleasure tonight. I've got Matthew Tepper here with the law firm of McCreary, Veselka, Bragg, and Allen. I know the agenda says that Harvey Allen is going to present, but he's unable to be here tonight. So we get to hear Mr. Tepper. And he's going to present our annual report on their efforts at collecting delinquent property taxes for us.
President Posey, Dr. Ott, rest of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to come here today. The one thing I can tell you just right off the bat is the fact that Mr. Allen is not here and that he trusted me to come and give this report. That is probably an indication that y'all have a really, really good report. Is there a way to get the report up on the screen? If not, I can do it without it if it's not. Okay, very good. What I'd really like to do, I think that when you look at delinquent tax collections, there's really 3 numbers that are very important to a board like yourself. And they start with the charts in your packet that begins on page 6. And the chart on page 6 shows what the total revenue from tax collections is. And I always think of this number as being the cash flow number. At the beginning of your budget cycle, when you know what the values are and what your tax rate is, there is a certain amount of money which you are expecting that you are going to collect if everybody just paid their current year taxes on time. Well, the number for this year, the percent of your original adjusted levy that we ended up collecting was 102.99%. And I know we've got a group of educators here, and so you all are thinking we've got some math classes you can take. How could you ever have over 100%? And the answer is that includes the current year taxes that are paid, taxes that were paid from back years, along with penalties and interest that are added. And I see Ms. Suarez nodding her head, and that's because she gets to hear this report every year over at the appraisal district and have that explained. So what that means is when you all budgeted, you thought you were going to get 100% of your levy brought in during the course of the year, you got almost 103% of your levy. And if you all promise not to tell the other school districts in Bell County, that was a lot better than Killeen ISD did this year or than Belton ISD did this year. If you look at the chart, you can also see that over the last 4 years, we have always gotten over 100%, and so your cash flow number is good. You are getting in the dollars that you are supposed to be getting in a given year. If you flip over to page 7, you've got your collection of tax levies to date. And what's important about that chart is that lets you know what percentage of the taxes that are owed are ultimately being paid. And you can see that for the 2013 taxes, which have now been delinquent for 63 months, you all have collected 99.78% of those taxes. That's virtually all the taxes that are 5 years old have been paid. That little bit, the 0.22% that hasn't been paid, that's a variety of different types of taxes. Some of them are property owners that are in bankruptcy. We may eventually get those as those bankruptcies wind down. Some of them are deferrals. People that are either over 65 or are disabled can put off the paying of their taxes on their residence homestead. Some of them are business personal property for a business that went out of business, maybe even before the taxes went delinquent, or on manufactured homes that may have disintegrated or disappeared. So you're never going to get up to 100%, but you can see that within a relatively short period of time, we get well above 99.5, 99.75% of the taxes. So you get enough money to cover your bills, and everybody who owes taxes to Temple ISD ultimately pays them. The third chart, which you can see on page 8, that really reflects the work that our firm does. Those first two charts, it's a joint effort between what our firm collects and also what the Tax Appraisal District of Bell County collects just from people paying their taxes on time. And if you look at the chart on page 8, though, you can see for the taxes that were turned over to our firm 6 months ago, we've already collected 51% of those taxes. And the taxes that were turned over to us 54 months ago, we've collected 88.37. And that 88.37% of the taxes, that's really the same number as the 99.78 that we covered on the other page. This doesn't just happen. The money doesn't just magically show up. Our firm gets up hard every day and we work. In the last year, we sent out almost 20,000 notices. We filed over lawsuits on over 250 properties. We took judgments on close to 200 properties. We posted 153 of them for sale and ultimately sold 60 of those properties. And that's what you want. Send out 20,000 notices, end up selling 60 properties. Everybody's got their own threshold for paying. Most people pay their taxes when the bill comes out. Some people pay it when they get a nasty letter. Other people pay it when they get sued. Other people come in at 9:30 on the first Tuesday of the month, right before it is about to get sold. If there's any questions, I could answer those for the board.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you very much, appreciate
Remains
it.
honor to represent you all in delinquent tax collection. Thank you very much.
Item 2, consideration for approval of the order of election for Temple Independent School District for the purpose of Temple ISD Board of Trustees, District 1 and 6. Is that a presentation, or do we need to? No.
Silence would be silent.
Okay.
Tonight in your packet, you have an order of election for Temple Independent School District, and of course, this is for trustees for Districts 1 and 6. This order of election, this order is for an election to be held on May the 4th, and applications for filing for a place on the ballot should be filed by this Friday, February 15th. This order is typical, and it's what you see every year. This lines out where the voting would be. Early voting by personal appearance would be conducted at the municipal building, and you see those hours listed there, and these will be published also. This notice will be. And then you see the early voting portion of that and how those applications for ballot by mail are sent to the city. We have an action item next that ties together with this order of election.
All right, any questions for Mr. Boyd? This item does require a motion, and Mrs. Gowan will abstain from this motion and from this vote. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Gaines. Seconded by Mrs. Davis. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? There's one abstention, but the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Posey.
And then the next item is 3, consideration for approval of the joint election agreement with the City of Temple, May 4th, 2019.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Posey. Several years ago, we began entering into joint election agreements. This is something that certainly saves the taxpayer money, and it helps us be much more efficient in having joint elections with other municipalities. So this agreement tonight would enter into that with the city. You see the polling places listed there. Early voting would be at the municipal building as stated earlier, and election day would be at the Fred Poteet building. The terms, duties, and expenses are all lined out in there also, and we would ask for your approval of this. I might also say it's always a pleasure, and we appreciate working with the city on this. Obviously, these efforts are coordinated with the city and with Bell County, and so we appreciate their work and their willingness to partner with us on this important event and all elections.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Boyd? This item does require a motion, and Ms. Gowan will also abstain from this vote. Motion by Dr. Sanhi,
A second.
seconded by Ms. Myers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstention. The ayes have it. Thank you. Item D is student services, and I don't believe we have anything, Mr. Haugeberg. Okay. Item E is board committee reports, facility committee's update, special meeting held January 11th, 2019, and regular meeting held January 30th, 2019, 4 p.m. Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Posey. Special meeting was held on Friday, January 11th, to discuss the fine arts project and the maximum guaranteed price. The committee discussed the proposal GMP for the fine arts and improvement at Temple High School. The improvements include additions for new band hall and renovations throughout the existing fine arts footprint. The GMP was presented and approved at the regular board meeting on January 14th. Work on the project has begun and should be completed by June 2020. Discussion of property, the committee discussed several properties, pieces of property, but the administration will update you on committee on future meetings on these properties. Our regular meeting was held on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. The committee discussed the following pieces of property. The property across from maintenance facility items have already been presented and will be discussed tonight. Property near Kennedy Powell, the administration provided information on potential development of east of Kennedy Powell. The administration will keep the committee apprised of the additional updates. Potential property purchase for the future campus construction. The committee discussed potential purchase of the southeast quadrant of the district. This item will be discussed further on the agenda tonight. Our next regular facility meeting will be held on February 28th at 4 p.m.
All right, any questions for Mr. Gaines? Thank you. E1A, consideration for approval to purchase property at Old Highway 95, Bell County, rural Texas. And Dr. Ott will make the presentation.
Okay, so Kent Boyd and I are actually going to tag team this. We're going to do this a little bit different because we're going to set up presentation boards. So I'd encourage the audience, if you want the opportunity to come up here so you can actually see the presentation boards, I would actually recommend it. And I'm going to present by starting with the demographic study to kind of lay this up. And I'll make a couple comments while they're setting up. And let me try to stand over here so I'm not in your way. So the first comment I would make to the board is to reiterate what Dan had said earlier, to use your mics because, you know, that way the viewing audience would have the chance to hear your comments. And this is something that I would hope the board would have discussion and questions during the presentation instead of waiting to the very end. And this is a very significant action item for the board because, quite honestly, it hadn't happened in over 20 years. So this is exciting but very significant. So I'm going to start this presentation with the demographic study. And if we can go to the first slide, and you can see it on your monitors there in front of you. So we know the city of Temple has been growing for some time, and Mayor Davis, I'll give you permission if I make a mistake on anything to correct me because I consider you an expert of the city. But it's been growing for some time. However, what we do know is most of the growth has been in the west part of the city. And that has also fed a different school district because of the attendance boundaries of the school district. And coincidentally, most of the growth in the past several years in the city of Temple has actually been within the school district boundaries of Belton Independent School District. So that part of the city is getting to a point of saturation. The development and the growth is kind of maxing out. And so where's the next place for growth and development? We've had several conversations with the city manager and some of the administrators at the city and also with developers. And quite honestly, the discussions have pointed to the southeast quadrant in the due south part of the city of Temple. Now, with that being said, those two areas actually feed the Temple Independent School District. And that's it. That is the school district that is fed, no other. So, with that being said, we went out, and I'm just going to kind of walk through memory lane here. We went out and secured the services of Templeton Demographics to get a professional study done of the future in terms of growth, of enrollment and projections, students, so forth of Temple ISD, considering these variables. We actually invited the city as well in this contract or this opportunity in the event that they wanted to do an infrastructure build-out study so we can work together. And that was in the summer. Bob Templeton, who would be the chief demographer of the firm, and he has, by the way, done demographic studies all up and down I-35, including our neighboring school districts. They have used him as well and does a fantastic job. He concluded his study, I think about the end of September, middle of October, and the board may remember he presented in October at that board meeting his results. I'm actually pulling from his slides here as kind of a reminder. So this slide here, what I really want you to note is that there are 9 yellow, I guess, boxes or areas there if you count them up. The black line represents the school district boundaries of Temple ISD. And you have here is the southeast quadrant of the city. Everything in yellow represents future development. Okay, and that was all part of the study. You know, he went through this with us. And in that, he talked about that within the school district boundaries, there are 2,700 planned future single-family lots and an additional 500 multifamily, which gives us a total of over 3,000 units planned in Temple ISD. And that's very important, and I will get back to that a little bit later in the presentation.
Dr. Ott,
Yes.
just a question. How do you calculate from that the number of students going to TISD?
So the demographer uses an average of a 0.6 multiplier per unit. And that's how they calculate the number of students in total to lead to the projections. So for example, and this is an example we'll actually get to later, if you have 1,600 or 1,660 units, a 0.6 multiplier is 996 students. And that is their average multiplier they use. So they use that per unit, and that's how they derive the projections that they get for future enrollment. Good question. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So now what I'm doing in this slide is I'm blowing up that southeast quadrant. I'm taking the most concentrated area here, and I want to talk about this area. So this development up here, we'll call it WB development. And then you have one here, that's South Point. You can drive right on down MLK and you will see that development to the left. And then further down is Prairie Ridge. Now the good news is this development up here says future mixed-use development. I will tell you, we've already had conversations with the developer, and that has completely been changed to all single family. And that is good news for TISD, because you may remember in the demographic study, we were well above the average of number of students that we have coming from multi-family units. So we really want to balance that, and that is an effort not just of the school district, but of the city, EDC, and so forth. We're really trying to balance that, and this is a great opportunity, the Southeast Quadrant, to do that, and maybe our only opportunity in terms of growth inside the city and in TISD.
Dr.
Yep.
Can I mention one other thing too that
Sure.
I think is important for this in this process? We've been given a seat at the table, and we've been given the opportunity, we being the school district, to talk with the developers, to talk with the city. This isn't happening in isolation, and we're trying to react and catch up. I think what's important, and I would say thank you to the city, to the developers, and all involved, is they're giving us that opportunity for input and helping us. I mean, we're not going to design their subdivisions for them, but they certainly have come and asked us what would be important to us from transportation pieces.
Got a microphone, Kent.
What would be important to us for bus stops and travel loops and that sort of thing. So again, really, that to me is something that's been very important and very beneficial for the district, especially with respect to this area.
Yes,
You
Mr.
might
Gann.
mention what the price point is going to be on the homes that's going to be listed in this.
Sure. So in all three of these developments, just giving a range, we have actually talked to all three developers. We've had them all in a room together. We've met with them individually several times. And so the price point for single family is 180 to mid 200. And that's what that is their price point, their range, entry level going about 180. And then, this is early discussions. I mean, obviously they haven't built the homes yet, but that's where they're coming in at. And that is great news for Temple ISD and the city of Temple.
And this is actually higher than the surrounding area, isn't it? This is actually a pretty high point to come in.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. It will certainly, it'll certainly raise the floor of unit and how much the average cost of home is in those areas for sure. Any other questions on this slide? Okay, next slide. So these are the numbers that came from the demographic study. And a couple pieces I want to draw your attention to. First of all, if you look at the fourth column, it's in a orange color. When you talk about the schools in the Southeast Quadrant, and this is actually the projections out 10 years, okay? So it goes all the way to 2028, 29. If you start with Ray Allen, right now sitting at 451, in 10 years it almost doubles, okay? That is very significant. And I'll get to something here in a second. When you look at Thornton is another one in that Southeast Quadrant. 100 students. Okay? Bonham is another one, around 100 students. Travis, around close to 100 students, closer to maybe 85. So my point is, when you look at all the numbers at the very bottom, the district totals, you have a maximum, or you have our current enrollment, right there in the orange, 8,705 students, taking it out to over 10,000, that's 1,300, but the largest concentrations are in the Southeast Quadrant. So once again, validating that that's the growth. That's where we're headed, right here, okay? See if I have anything else on here. Nope, next. Any questions? Let me back up. Any questions? And I know some of this is review because it was presented, in October, and we've kind of talked about it several times, but I do think it's a good layup for folks in the audience and folks that weren't part of the demographic study. Okay, next slide. So, results, right? Final summary results. Current facilities, we currently have 1 early childhood school, 8 elementaries, 3 middle schools, and 1 high school. Build out facilities needed. So the demographer, the information says 1 to 3 additional sites needed. Now you may or may not remember, but at the October meeting, our demographer referenced that 1 elementary school in the next 3 years. So 1 would be quick, right? And it makes sense when you think about the schools that I just mentioned and where they're located and where the growth is. 1 additional middle school site in the next 10 years, and then high school remains the same. Okay, next. So this slide here is the one I want to leave up here before we get to the presentation boards. As part of the demographic study, what they do is they come back with ideal locations for school sites. That's part of the study. So once again, the black line represents the school district's attendance boundaries, okay? The red lines are each school's attendance zones, okay? You'll see 4 circles. The small yellow ones, there's 1 way up here in the northwest corner, and then 2 down here in the southeast quadrant. Those are elementary sites. The large orange one, once again, in the southeast quadrant. So make note, 3 of the 4 locations are in the southeast quadrant. Once again, validating what we've been talking about. So this one here is a potential area for a middle school. It's larger, why? Because several elementaries feed a middle school, that's why. There is some overlap here, well, and actually here too, almost like a Venn diagram. But that's very important to recognize because when we get to the presentation boards, I'll be able to explain that in a little more detail. Any questions about the demographic study? Any at all from the board? We're good? Okay, let's go to the presentation boards now. And as I said earlier, audience members, we're going to be talking from here. And if you want to scoot up or get a better view, please feel free to do so. Okay, so as a result of the demographic study, we shared that with the city right away. Right away, we shared it with the city. And we know the city does long-range planning because they have to plan for infrastructure, sewer, for example, trunk lines, for example, roads, for example. So we need to make sure that we're working together in this process. And for the last 7 or 8 months, we have been in lockstep with the City of Temple in discussions and also developers.
Dr. Ott, was the city involved in this process of helping select the site?
I'll go ahead and answer that question now. They were involved when we landed on this site, yes, okay. They were. We were talking about landowners, developers, and you'll see that when we get deeper in the presentation because you're actually going to see some of their plans that were discussed with us in terms of Canyon Creek Drive in this area. So yes, they were involved, and they've been involved the entire time. In fact, we sat down together to before the demographic results of the demographic study were shared, we sat down together and started talking about parcels.
Mr. Gaines has a question.
Yep.
All the planned infrastructure and all has been set up for this area, all that's going here?
It's in the planning stages, but there's not infrastructure out here at this point. And our hope is, obviously we have to make the first commitment, and then after that the city commits and prioritizes and so forth because they want to support the school district. And Mayor, if I speak out of turn, then tell me. Okay, so with that being said, Those three circles on the demographic, the slide of the demographic study. Let me go over here to this presentation board. So you remember the three developments I talked about? They're right here. Here's one of them. Here's the other. And there's the other. Just to orient you a little bit, this right here is MLK. Then it comes down to Old Highway 95. Okay? All right. The blue line, it's not black, it's blue on this one, would be our attendance boundaries for TISD. This gerrymanders, it comes way down here. This blue line way down south comes up and down again, and then connects here. But this represents our attendance line. This right here, number 11, would be Thornton Elementary. Okay? I'm just trying to get everybody oriented here. This is Scott up here. Okay? 13 would be, that's Temple College. 14 is Travis, and then Ray Allen is right here, hugging that attendance boundary. Okay? Blacklands, it's kind of a zigzag look, but it kind of goes like this. And then you've got the railroad here. I think our Panda's out this way, landfill, and so forth. So this circle here is actually one of the small yellow circles on the demographic study that represents an elementary campus. Okay? And this circle, it's not drawn exactly right, but it actually comes up. It doesn't go all the way down. And I'm going to explain why it does here. It actually comes up and then comes across. The middle school circle runs more like this. So this is an overlay, this area right here. These yellow boxes are either future or current major intersections. Okay? Just trying to get everybody oriented here. Any questions on kind of where we're at? Okay. Yes. I'm sorry.
How much land is needed for elementary schools versus middle schools?
Great question. So elementary schools, depending on the size, sit on acreage of 10 to 16. Point of reference, Thornton Elementary School sits on 12 acres of land. Thornton's capacity is over 800 students. So I know that there are some school districts, they carry elementary schools that have over 1,000. You're going to have more acreage, parking, that kind of thing. Middle school, between 23 and about 28. And that depends on if you're going to have a stadium and a track, and how big is the track? Is it 3-lane? Is it 7-lane, 8-lane? All those things factor in. So in total, in excess of 40 acres on the high side is really what you're looking at for two pieces of property. Okay? Any other questions on that? So when you add these three subdivisions here, all right, and this small one that's already, it was an active development on the slide. There's 123 in this one, 517, remember this is the one they converted to all single family, 517 in WB's planning, and I cannot read that, 368 I believe.
Yes, sir. 368 here and 332 right here.
So this is South Point off Case Road, and that is Prairie Ridge. And you notice they kind of go like this. And then look at this piece here. And this is what we're going to talk about, because this one's 320. When you add all of these together, you get 1660. At the multiplier I said earlier, that's over 900 students. Okay, and we're talking in a concentrated area here.
Dr. Wright,
Yep.
do we know the timetable for these subdivisions?
So South Point is happening as we speak, right here on Case Road. If you drive out there, you'll see the sign, you'll see the dirt work, that's happening right now. This one is supposed to be, it's my understanding, in a year they're supposed to get going, and this one is on the same timeline as that one. Prairie Ridge, rather, and I call this WB.
So it's pretty aggressive, that it's almost here.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question about that,
Yes,
also
Shannon.
about the developments. Is there anything that holds a developer to, like you talked about the cost per unit, is there anything that holds a developer to stay with that plan? Or does it get modified as the development
would
goes along
say-
and they sell a unit and?
I would say the partnership does, and I will just be very honest and tell you that if they don't honor the things that they say, then I think partners, whether it's the city and the school district, can make it difficult for them. And I think that's the best way to say it. So.
I agree. I think too, in this area, and just my feeling from talking with them, because of the ability for growth out here, and I think Dr. Ott mentioned it earlier, you know, those developers know that's saturated pretty much to the west. I mean, it's not all built out yet going west out into Belton ISD, but it is certainly already platted and land is spoken for. This is really the last place to develop. And so I think they, not speaking for them, but I think they feel pretty comfortable with that price range because they see what that demand is going to be also as it comes. Again, there's no real way to hold them to that, but ultimately you want the market to drive that. And I think there's a comfort level that the market will drive that price range, this being the next or the last great development space in Temple per se.
And developers really like to work in situations and feel comfortable when the city and the school district and other entities are all collaborating and working with them. I will tell you that the meetings we've had, there has been no problem on the discussions of the price range. And it wasn't like we came in and highballed it. You know, it was a joint kind of conversation, and it's gone very, very smooth. Just knowing the developers and the conversations that we've had, I feel very, very comfortable that these are going to be higher priced homes than we've seen in south and southeast part of Temple.
And this deal that we're bringing to you all tonight, or this potential purchase, is, I mean, this is exciting to them too, because as they develop, obviously they need to know there's a viable campus that's in the works. There's a way to handle the growth in students and so forth. And so that makes their development worth more, in effect, if they know this is coming to and they know this is in the works. And so again, with the city planning infrastructure, with the school discussing this potential, those are all real positives also for those developers, and I think can help hopefully support those prices into a really healthy range.
When you come down this way, come down MLK, what you're going to notice is you're going to have, you have units here, units there, units here, units here, and then planned units coming here. So this whole area, like I said earlier, gives you 1,660 units, okay, coming up and down here. One of the developers owns a 130-acre tract of land. That tract of land, I guess I can still use this one here, and then I'll bounce over to here. That tract of land, this road right here does not exist right now. This does not exist. That tract of land, this red line here, runs right along Barnhart Road, okay? And then here is 95 and then Old Highway 95. That 130-acre tract of land is right here. Okay, so when this developer purchased this land, they have offered us 47.5 acres, which is right here. Now I'm going to take this area right here and I'm going to blow it up, and this is it over here.
So that's the school there?
Drawn in. But I would also caution you that as we look at this, don't get hung up on where the elementary is or the middle school or exactly which way it's facing or that sort of thing. I mean, that would be something that in time we would develop that and come up with an appropriate location and orientation and so forth. But yes, ma'am, that's where they've put that as a placeholder.
So this road does not exist. This road does not exist. All you have out here is floodplain, and you have this land here. Actually, it's all the way down here. See, that box is this area right here. It says future development, okay? This is 130 acres. It actually goes off the board and comes back up. This is 47.5 acre tract here. We could work with the city on the positioning of the road, you know, during the design process, if the middle school's better here and the elementary's here. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities there. One of the advantages is you have a natural floodplain here that collects drainage right in here. That's one of the advantages. And the city, in their planning and the discussions we've had, they have plans to bump this out, come down. So you have, as schools, you have that are surrounded.
And that's Canyon Creek Drive, correct?
Yes, that is yeah, I'm sorry, I should have said that. That is Canyon Creek Drive.
It's actually turns into Blackland here. Yeah, it'd be Blackland Road as it comes across. It's Canyon Creek, and then turns into, goes past the, well, over here would be the research facility. So, but yeah, they've got it Canyon Creek here, but it's Blackland in the middle, so I don't know which name it would hold.
But you're able to be far enough away from major, you know, those yellow boxes, right? I mean, this is far enough away. If expanding this road and you know, doing some work to Old Highway 95 is part of the plans, that gives us good track here. And then, you know, depending on what works better for an elementary or middle school, what site is middle school better up here, elementary, you would have the option to, you know, work with the city and collaborate and, you know, potentially move this road here somewhere in between that makes sense. And really the reason for, and I'll get to price and all that in a second, a couple things. The reason you want to do something like this, you want to get ahead of development. Okay, if you head north, you go this way, you've got a lot of stuff going on. You want to be on the other side of it because you want the city to have enough time to thoughtfully plan infrastructure in fund. And so you have to position yourself in a way that works with the city. The other thing that I failed to mention earlier, you know, one of the questions may be, well, how come we don't expand Thornton? How come we don't expand Ray Allen? Well, we don't expand Thornton. We just opened Thornton, and it's full. It's full right now. And Ray Allen, you want to talk to Ray Allen about the sister
Ray Allen,
piece?
and that was something that I was planning on putting in here at some point because, you know, when Ray Allen, Kennedy Powell, and Hector P. were all built, they're built with the same floor plan. We call them sister schools. They're built effectively identically. They were all originally built with the idea in mind that they could be expanded out each of the different directions, out of the different hallways. And why that still is a very viable option for both Kennedy Powell and Hector P. because of their location, it's not a viable option for Ray Allen. Ray Allen is located on 12 acres, but only about 9 of that is actually usable space, primarily because of drainage, and you all know that, and people who've been on that campus, especially after rain, know that. The drainage that runs to the east and to the north is problematic, and then you've also got a large detention pond that was built behind that, up a little bit higher, that part of that property was used for that when that development was made 15 years ago or so. So effectively, Ray Allen cannot be extended, cannot be grown. Kennedy Powell and Hector P. both can be. Kennedy Powell is on 34 acres, I believe, and Hector P. is on about 28 acres. But that really is what our challenge is. And yeah, in a perfect world, this is a great location, but we're just locked in right there.
This particular site, when we were approached by the developer, made sense because if you remember earlier when I was talking about the demographic study, slide up here, this is the overlay. With Canyon Creek in the future bumping out, this is the spot where you can capture from one seller land for an elementary and a middle school in the future and get the track and have the opportunity to work closely with that developer on a master planned, high-quality living community that surrounds the school. Price point. Any questions before I get into price point?
Well, we mentioned the floodplain there on the east side of that area, and you've got big developments to the north that will be feeding that drainage, looks like. The city get involved in slowing that runoff.
So I'll make two comments. One, because I'm going to answer this question, but it's the last one I can answer because this isn't a public comment item, it's an action item, so it's only for the board. But I will answer this, and that's it. We have been working very close with the city on these developments. So that discussion, whether it's sewer lift station, whether it's water, whether it's floodplain, that has all been in the discussions before we've even thought about bringing this item to the board. So price point, the average sell price for acreage out here is $16.5 an acre right now. Okay, right now. I can assure you in 3 years that's going to go up. It'll probably go up in a year. So the contract you have before you is 47.5 acres for $14,750 an acre, which is considerably lower. When we had discussions way back when, I was thinking that we were going to be spending out of fund balance, and let me qualify that. This is a fund balance purchase, right? And that's very important. This doesn't come out of the checking account, right? This comes out of the fund balance, and we have a very healthy fund balance. You've heard our financial ratings presentation has been very conservative. So this is what it's for, right? Early on, I was always thinking that it would be around 800,000. Well, and I wasn't thinking 47 acres, I was thinking lower 40. Well, this will come in at a little over 700, I think it's 703,000 in the contract, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a purchase that will satisfy 2 of the schools and set us up for the next bond whenever that comes, and set us up for our families and our students inside our attendance zone, right, inside the city of Temple for the next
Mr. Gaines has a
several
question.
years. Yes, Ronnie?
Dr. Otter, how does this compare with the other districts that have purchased property, this 14 to you that's being offered for this lots here? How does it, or acreage here, how does that compare with other districts?
Sure. I do know that the high school site, high school number 2 in Belton ISD, that site, which was purchased, I think 6 years ago or 5 years ago, was north of 17,000 an acre. So I don't feel comfortable revealing their exact price because that's kind of their business, but it was higher than what we're paying for this. Any questions from the board? Comments, questions? This has been a long journey, a long process. Whether Mayor Davis is here or not, I would like to thank the city publicly because they have made us feel very comfortable in this process as we've gone through. And I can tell you, we have not taken one step forward without multiple conversations with the city manager, Bryn Myers, and some of the other folks on her staff that have worked closely. We led with expert data, demographic study, and that's what you need to do. I mean, that's diligence. That's what we have to do when we're positioning the school district for the future. So we started with that and then continued conversations, and we've been very fortunate that all these developers are working with the school, working with the city, and we were fortunate enough to have one to give us this offer at a sell price that is lower than I would have guessed.
I have a comment.
Yes, Virginia?
Having been here as long as I've been here, when we did the sister schools, we did as much planning as we could. The approach to this has been totally different. The demographic study helped to understand where the growth was coming, that there were already things in the works. And I truly feel that for the first time, we are on the track of really feeding our district to grow where it was naturally going to go without trying to just find a school and put it up, not knowing where the growth was going to be. So it's a win for the district, it's a win for the city, and I mean, it's our community, so it's a win for all of us. And it's a much better way of doing things than we've done in the past.
And my biggest fear personally, and I was in a previous district where we built a school every year, when you're able to get an offer on a site for a very reasonable price that is selected as an ideal site versus delaying, and then you're hemmed in to a piece of property that doesn't really make sense, and they know that because a lot of things have been developed, you're not far enough ahead, and then they price gouge you. And being this far in front and having and I'll tell you, that's the beauty of working with the city. Because having some insight on their long-range planning and so forth, this really allows us to be smart and deliberate about what we're purchasing at a good price. So I feel good about the approach. I agree with you. I would not want to come to this board with a piece of property that wasn't in one of those circles and was overpriced and we didn't have options. I would not want to do that.
I have a
Shannon, I
question
think
for
you had
you.
a question.
I know this is data-driven, but it's also a prediction. In situations like this where in actuality it doesn't play out the way we predicted and we have purchased land, I know we wouldn't be building anytime soon. The whole point is to set us up for the future. What happens though when if we have land that we end up it not being ideal to build on? Or the timing isn't right.
Or the growth wasn't there.
Or the growth
right.
isn't right.
Or didn't matriculate into the numbers. And that's a great question, which is why I'm glad the price point's where it's at as well. Before we made a decision on anything, if we waited long enough and infrastructure was already out there and you saw developments coming up and some retail, but we're not getting the foot traffic, the student foot traffic that the demographic study showed, well, then we would modify the plan, but at the end of the day, we still own that property, and somebody's going to want to buy it. And I promise you, if they want to buy that down the road, it will not be $14,750 an acre. So if it doesn't work out as an investment for our kids, then it will be an investment for the school district in another way. So we could sell it or sell part of it. We could take the money and we could use it to support the district in other ways if we had to do that. But that would not be a recommendation I would give till way down the road, until the infrastructure's played out, till we're able to see the units, the homes, and everything is settled. And then at that point, if we're not getting the numbers that warrant, say it doesn't warrant a middle school, say it's just an elementary school. And the other thing we have to keep in mind is this attendance line right here comes all the way down. This right here is a developable tract of land. There are several down here. So we've got other situations due south that, and let me just stop right there and tell you, that's why we will continue our relationship with the demographer. This was not a one-time study. You keep a demographer on retainer, you re-up the study, you let them study the population changes that take place, you let them study the enrollment changes, the mobility of students, new developments, and then they turn over every year and give us an updated study. And that allows us to make the decisions you're talking about if we have to make those decisions down the road. Great question.
I like the word investment that you use because this is exciting. This is also practical. This is an appropriate use of your fund balance. And in reality, it's an investment. And it's something that sets us up and sets those that come after us up and sets all those children that come up that will be there someday. I don't know when it'll happen, but it'll happen at some point, and that's the exciting part of it. It's been great for us to be part of a forward-thinking group of folks, developers, city folks, as Dr. Ott said several times. We're appreciative that we've had a seat at the table and a voice in the process, and that's critical to us being here today, and this is critical, we believe, to positioning us for the future, for sure.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Any other questions for Dr. Ott and Mr. Boyd? Okay, this is a big, just, I guess, historic for the district, because I know it's been 20-plus years since the district's even purchased land for additional schools. This is not something that's done lightly, and we've gone through the presentations tonight. It's very well thought out. It's been going on as long as, actually, I think, Dr. Ott, you hit the ground running when you became our superintendent. I know work had been done some prior to that, but I know that you really took it over and really started working with it when you became superintendent last June. This is just a very important vote tonight for the future of our district and the future of our city. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
I make a motion to purchase a 47.655 acre tract of land at Old Highway 95, Bell County, rural Texas, in the amount of $702,911.25. That's a big number.
I'll second the motion.
A motion made by Ms. Suarez, seconded by Ms. Gowan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Very good deal. It is passed.
Thank you.
All right. Item B, the next facility committee meeting is Thursday, February 28th, 2019 at 4 p.m. Item 2 is a policy committee update. Mrs. Davis.
The meeting was called to order at 4:02 p.m. Mr. Haugeberg gave a brief update on the legislative issues. He explained to the committee that House Bill 452 was filed by Hugh Shine, especially for Bell County, to create a truancy master to handle truancy cases. Other issues discussed were school funding, recapture dollars, and vouchers. Dr. Ott mentioned that he is fighting for local control of funds. He pointed out that throughout the state, districts' needs are specific to each district, and that a one-size-fits-all approach is not appropriate. He would like to see districts be able to use any additional revenue to best meet the needs of their district. Mr. Haugeberg gave a brief review on the following policies: DGBA, employee complaints, grievances; F&G, student and parent complaints, grievances; GF, public complaints. Mr. Haugeberg explained the grievance processes, specifically the timelines associated with these policies. He stated that the goal for the district is to informally resolve the issue compliant at the lowest level possible. The board's decision is final unless the complaint involves some type of federally defined right. Meeting adjourned at 5:03 p.m. The next policy committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 27th at 4 p.m. in the board conference room.
Okay, any questions of Mrs. Davis? Thank you very much. Item D is board policy review. Mr. Haugeberg.
Good evening. Tonight, we're going to take a little diversion from our board policy journey. We're going to go through, we've been going through Section B, which is the local government's part of policy, but today we're going to review the complaint and grievance policies. There are 3 of these policies, one in Section D for employees, one in Section F, which is for students and parents, and one in Section G, which is for the public. And as you read through these policies, there are many similarities, and even the bulk of the language in these processes are exactly the same. The foundation of these policies is rooted in the U.S. Constitution First Amendment's right to petition the government to redress grievances, as well as Article 1 of the Texas Constitution. In general, Board policy encourage, whether it's the employee, student, or the parent, to have their concern brought to the attention as soon as possible to allow the earliest resolution at the lowest possible administrative level. For example, if there was a concern with a teacher, the principal would be the one that would address it. Or if there was a concern about a special program, it would be the director that would address it. Before we get to the formal process, some definitions. Now, these aren't going to be as exciting as the definitions in previous policy reviews, but they're important just the same. The first is response. And when these policies say response, they are defined as a written response. The second, days. Days means district business days. Also, the grievance process is divided up into three stages, level 1, level 2, and level 3. So to start a level 1 process, the written complaint form must be filed within 15 days of the date the employee or student or parent first knew or should have known of the decision or action giving rise to the complaint. The form is submitted to the lowest level administrator who has authority to remedy the alleged problem. In most circumstances, that's typically the campus principal. The administrator must then decide or must schedule a conference with the person to be held within 10 days of the receipt of the complaint. And after the conference, the administrator investigates the situation, makes a decision regarding the remedy request, and has 10 days to provide a written response. A word of note that even during the formal complaint process, person with the concern and the administration is encouraged to seek an informal resolution to their concern, and if that resolution is reached, then the formal complaint can be withdrawn. If the complainant isn't satisfied with the level 1 response, a written appeal must be submitted within 10 days of receiving the response, and this starts the level 2 process. Again, the appropriate administrator must schedule a conference within 10 days after the receipt of the appeal, and in most cases, the level 2 administrator is one of the assistant superintendents, depending on the nature of the situation and the extent of the prior involvement of the area assistant superintendent in the situation. And after the conference, the administrator investigates the situation and the process that was followed at the level 1 conference, and makes a decision regarding the person's appeal and has again 10 days to provide a written response. If the complainant isn't satisfied with the level 2 response, a person may then appeal to the board, and this is the level 3. A written appeal must be submitted within 10 days of receiving the notice. The appeal is limited to the issues and documents that are considered at level 2. The person is informed of the date, time, place of the board meeting in which the complaint will be on the agenda for the presentation to the board. And that is typically the next regularly scheduled board meeting. You as a board then determine whether the presentation will be an open or closed session in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act and other laws. The board president sets the time limits and guidelines, and after hearing the complaint, the board can either make a decision and give notice of that decision, or within that next scheduled board meeting, if the board does not give a response, then the level 2 decision is upheld. In most situations, you, the board, are the final word at level 3. Your decision, as was mentioned, can't be appealed to the Texas Education Agency or the state, except if there's a claim of denial of a constitutionally defined right or a violation of state law. So you have the 15 days from the start, then the 10 days to schedule a conference, 10 days to have a response, and then 10 days for the complainant to submit an appeal, and then there's 10 days to schedule that conference, and then 10 days to submit a request, and then 10 days to submit level 3 to the board, and the board can then, at its next board meeting, can hear the presentation. So as you can see, this grievance process, depending on the complexity, is not necessarily an immediate process and can take 2 to 3 months to complete. Almost all concerns are handled informally through phone calls or meeting with the principal or the central office administrator. Typically in a year, we have 6 to 10 level 1 complaint forms submitted. Maybe 1 or 2 of those reached the level 2. And to my knowledge, the board hasn't heard a level 3 presentation in several years or maybe longer. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Haugeberg? If not, thank you very much. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for attending tonight.